So let me just start out with a big thank you to Dr. Chen and also Professor Wang for a fascinating discussion on the transformation at Foxconn. Now, for the second session of the day, we're going to explore technology-based transformations of healthcare and learn specifically about Mindray and the trends and developments in the medical equipment sector and the uniqueness of the Chinese market and the unique origin of Mindray in China. Our speakers today are going to be evaluating and examining and demonstrating how hardware and data are coming together and how those are creating new solutions and how these are going to impact the future of healthcare itself. They're also going to be talking more broadly about innovation at Mindray, what it's looking at in the future, how it's going to add to what is already a very diversified portfolio, and the efforts they're taking to further enhance diagnostic confidence and advanced imaging. They're also going to be sharing their broader views about the future of healthcare. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator of this session, a UCLA Anderson alumnus and a very talented former student of mine from the UCLA NUS Executive MBA program, Ryan Tan, who also visited Mindray with me as part of my class back in 2019. Ryan is the Chief Operating Officer of D'Crypt, which is wholly owned by Temasek Holdings. D'Crypt is a high-value design and development firm that delivers cryptographic technology and components that are an integral part of customers' information security appliances, systems, and applications. Prior to this role, Ryan headed M&A and corporate planning at StarHub, which is Singapore's second largest integrated telco. Prior to that, he was head of strategy and risk management at SMRT Corporation. Prior to that, a consultant with Bain. And then prior to that, he held operational and leadership roles in Singapore's armed forces. As a reminder, we'll have time for audience questions. Please pose your questions via the Slido tool, which is at the bottom of your screen. And again, you can enter your own question or you can upvote one of the existing ones. Please join me now in welcoming Ryan Tan.
Hi, Ron. Good evening and good morning from us here in Singapore and the other side of the world. Thank you very much for attending this session. Just some quick context on the market before I jump into introductions to our speakers today. The medical devices market, which comprises the development, marketing, and sales of medical devices and diagnostic equipment, is a fast-growing one. It contributes to the global R&D sector, and it's large in size and truly global. Some of the catalysts for this market include the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the aging population and just a general rise in healthcare expenditure overall. You know, in this market, Mindray is a global leader in the provision of these medical devices and solutions. I don't want to steal David and Jason's thunder, but just a quick introduction. Founded in 1991, it is now truly global. It has 9 R&D centers worldwide, about 10,000 employees, 40 subsidiaries, and it has a market capitalization of just under $500 billion. So definitely a global leader in the sector. Quick introductions to 2 people you'll be hearing from today from Mindray. Jason, he is the Director for Global Marketing, and he has held several management roles internationally from Africa to the Middle East. And he will be giving a presentation on Mindray. And following that, David, who is the Group Vice President of Mindray Medical. He joined Mindray about 16 or 17 years ago. He worked in several management and corporate roles throughout Europe and North America, and immensely international. He graduated from Shanghai's Jiao Tong University, and he has his MBA from Sun Yat-sen University in Guangzhou. So I'll hand it over to David and Jason now, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. David and Jason, please.
Hello again. Yeah, this is a greeting from Jason Wang, the Global Marketing Department of Mindray Medical. Yeah, and for today, we are going to share some kind of our insights regard to our understanding for the healthcare globally and also the medical devices industrial. Yeah. First, we will see some data comes from the World Health Organization regard to the World Health Expenditure. Nowadays, we had found out more and more people and also more and more governments paid more and more attention in the healthcare fields. And also we can see the big imbalance globally regard to the healthcare expenditure. According to the data comes from the WHO 2018. Definitely for the country like States, I mean the number is more than $10,000 and also we can see thousands of $, from 4,000 to 6,000 for the Western European countries, and for the average of the world it's like 1,100, and in China it was around 500. And also from another angle, if we see the difference of the we can see the difference of the percentage of the healthcare expenditure as a percentage of GDP. We can also see the very leading for states, for example, 17%, and for the rest of the Western European countries, OECD countries, is like 10 to 12%, and China in 2018 it was 5.4%. So which means I mean there is a huge of the challenge in China. I mean, and also a lot of the other emerging markets in the healthcare, especially during the pandemic. And nowadays in China today, I mean, especially in the process of the China's urbanization in the recent years, the population structure and the distribution had changed a lot. And the current medical resources and allocation can't meet the needs of the public and more. Currently, the problem of the difficulty in seeing a doctor has become very prominent. In general, the medical resources are extremely unbalanced in China, especially between the public and the private hospitals. Between hospitals in top tertiary hospitals in big cities and county-level hospitals in China, public hospitals undertake around more than 8%, even 90% of the total healthcare service, while only 10% from the private hospitals. And the large-scale or top tertiary hospitals are currently overcrowded, while few patients are receiving treatment in county-level or rural area hospitals. And also, we know that for the healthcare expenditure, mainly comes from two parts. One comes from the pharmaceutical industrial, and another side comes from the medical devices. Let's take a look at the healthcare market between medicine and medical devices. In developed markets, like in the US, Europe, and other OECD countries, medical devices accounts for around 50% of the total market. And the global level is around 40, a little bit more than 40. But in China today, the pharmaceutical market takes the majority of the markets, and the medical devices only takes a quarter of the total market, which demonstrates the big potential in the future. In 2018, the size of global medical devices market is a little bit more than $400 billion. China market size counts only for 18% of the global market. In a longer future, global medical devices market grows steadily. Since 2019, the market was growing at low digit rate, and the US and Europe continued to be the largest market. Globally, US taking around 40%, Europe taking another 30%. Chinese market has been rising years by years in the past decades, from single digits to nowadays. China is 18%, and the number is still rising. Now we are seeing some of the basic figures which had been introduced by Mr. Ryan just now. Globally, we are around 10,000 people, and out of China, especially in the international markets, we have more than 40 subsidiaries in more than 30 countries nowadays. Yeah, and nowadays our products and service are serving more than 190 countries and regions globally. Yeah, and research and development is something very important in the medical devices industry. Globally nowadays, yeah, we have 9 research and development centers, 3 of them in states, even one of them just very close to our university in the central side of the Silicon Valley in the western coast. Another one in the eastern coast in Mahwah of New Jersey, and another one in the northwest in Seattle. Yeah, and in China, especially in the north, south, west, and east. In total, we have 6 research and development centers. Yeah. And also in the previous decades, 3 decades, yeah, since Mindray was founded in 1991, we have the constant investment into the research and development. Yeah, and also we got great returns as well. Nowadays, we have more than 2,500 research and development personnels, and also annually we launch 7 to 12 new products. Nowadays, we have more than 4,800 of the patent applications. Yeah. And amongst our research and development team, we have more than 67% of them with a master or above degree education background. Yeah. As of 2019, most of our products are ranking top 1 or top 2 in China, surpassing our international competitors, and globally, some of our products are ranking number 3. As a result, Mindray was voted as 2018 Global Challengers by the Boston Consulting Group. This was the 3rd time that the company received this award. All the global challengers are leading players in the local markets, challenging the current global market pattern. And finally, we want to say thanks again for your very valuable time and like our vision, better healthcare for all. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jason, for that presentation, and thank you, David, as well. Very interesting. Very interesting that we look at the market and we've actually seen some of the global trends. I just wanted to open then, since the conference is about the technology-based transformations of healthcare, what are some of the trends that you see in the market, and how do you see evolving globally based on your market segments that you operate in, as well as specifically with a focus on technology? How do you see that playing into the segments that you compete in today?
Yeah, I think especially after maybe not after the pandemic, but still we are in the pandemic outside of China. But I think it's because of the pandemic, a lot of the government realized that the healthcare investment should be maintained, and also in most of countries need to be keep invest. I think in the past, especially the developed countries, a lot of countries, maybe before pandemic, a lot of countries started to control the healthcare investment. We see the hospital numbers decreased, and also small hospitals need to move together to build bigger hospitals and to decrease the healthcare hospitals numbers. But I think during the pandemic, the government realized that if there is not enough hospitals to cover more patients, and I think it's very difficult to control the pandemic, also to control some kind of the urgent cases. So for the trend, we see the market will grow, and also we will see a lot of investment will be continued for the future.
Yeah, so very interesting. Thanks for that. Just a quick follow-up question on that, David. Given the increase in the healthcare expenditure by these countries, as you say, what do you see the role of the private sector? Like, for example, for Mindray, do you then start engaging the hospitals to educate them a bit more about the role of technology and how specifically you as Mindray or your devices can help them? How do you see your role evolving as the expenditure goes up?
I think that during pandemic, we also contribute a lot because it's when the pandemic started, we see a lot of hospitals need ventilators. So Mindray is one of the key suppliers for ventilators. So we started from the Chinese New Year, and then it's a lot of our staff is back to the manufacturers started to work to deliver equipment. So I think it's as a private sector, so it's we can use our technology, we can use our network to help to deliver as much devices as we can. And also it's what we can see for the hospital level, most of the countries started to put more resources into the public sectors because it's in the government sectors, public hospitals will take more responsibilities to control such kind of a pandemic. The private sectors, especially private hospitals, because this is not mandatory for them to take more patients. So in some cases, some of the countries, they, if there is no enough public hospitals, then means, it is very difficult from the government to drive the hospitals to do something for free. So I think it's both sides. From the hospital level, the government hospitals take more responsibility than private. Most of countries, they do the same things, okay? And also it's from the industry level, I think it's because most of the industry, most of the healthcare industry belongs to the private sector, so private owners. So I think as an industry, we do, do our best and try to, take our social responsibilities.
Very interesting answer. Thank you, David, for that. It certainly makes sense that some of the investment goes towards the private sector. Generally, I think we all know that the private sector does engender some more efficient outcomes in general. So moving on to a related topic now, we talked about investment, the growing expenditure and investment in this sector. And we know a key source of value in this sector is innovation and R&D. Now, I know Mindray prides itself heavily on its investment into R&D. We heard from Jason, 9 R&D centers worldwide, 67% of employees with a master's or a PhD degree. And I think investment of about 10% of your annual revenues into R&D. So 2 quick questions here. One, how do you manage being a leader in a global R&D center outfit? Because a lot of your value comes from R&D. And the second question here is, you have R&D centers across so many regions, as shown on the map just now. How do you manage the cultural differences in the R&D? And do you have any key learnings for members of the audience who might be either A, working in an R&D outfit like yours, or B, managing such a global R&D setup?
R&D is the key as the medical devices companies. It's for us, I think we need to know the reason of the investment. So I think we need to make our R&D people understand why we need to invest, why they need to develop something. So they must solve the customer needs. They must solve the customers' problems. So just like as Jason showed it just now, I think it's customer oriented and also demand driven. I also it's because of we cover all over the world, a lot of countries. So I think the demand for each country is a little bit different. So we need to understand their demand and also understand the reason why they need such kind of features. So we need to have a very strong analyst team. We need to have somebody in the headquarters really deeply understanding the customers. So then it's when we collected the demand from all over the world, then we can decide what kind of solutions we should provide. So our R&D center in globally, so it's take the different responsibilities. For example, the R&D center in the United States, we have the high-level talent scientists, and they are in the field and in this industry for more than 30 years. So they fully understand the customer need, and they also can find some hidden requirement from customers. Maybe customer did not tell them, but they know through the workflow and through the visit to the customers. And but those kind of R&D people and scientists that can give us the deeply information. And from the China, we have a very strong engineering team. So it's our engineer. We have more than 3,000 R&D people, and most of them take the PhD and master degrees. And they have a very quick, it's very efficient. They have a very quick response to the customer need. So it's we combine the understanding of the high-level hospitals, and also it's combined with the efficiency with the Chinese engineers. So I think but about cultures, I think for the healthcare, doctors' need is more common. We do not see a big difference between the demand of the cultures, but for sure to manage the different the engineer from different countries, we need to understand what they need, and we need to understand the cultural difference.
It's very interesting, David. Two themes that come out to me very clearly from what you spoke about. The first, listen to the customer. There's a certain agility around understanding what the customer wants and then going toward that. The other is, do not do R&D for R&D's sake. As Professor Kramer mentioned, I also work in tech. And the thing that we always say is, don't do R&D just to do R&D. Do R&D with the view of commercializing it and getting value out of it. That kind of focus, and I can see you're nodding, is really very, very important in R&D of it.
Yes.
And related to that though, and if R&D is such a big driver, in our industry, key question is around IP, intellectual property. What are some of the key learnings in terms of protecting the intellectual property that your R&D activities generate? I work in Singapore, and that's only one country, but the problems and the issues for you must be immense because you manage a whole global R&D setup. So some thoughts on protection of IP, please.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very good question, because we are the high-tech companies, and we invest a lot of money into the R&D, and we develop a lot of technologies and also be patent. We don't want other companies or other people's to take our IP without doing anything. I think we have the same things, same understanding from the other countries, also from the other companies. So it's a start from when we started our business. We do everything from our side. I think we put a lot of resources to protect it, the patent. I think that we have more than 2,500 the patent globally. So I think they use this kind of patent to protect it ourselves is very, very important. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Yes, patents are definitely important, and of course, enforcing them is also another tricky thing. But you're right, patents are the first step in the protection of the IP that you generate. Okay, so I would like to move on to another related topic, which is closely linked to the overall conference theme. That's data and governance. So I would like to ask Mindray and yourself for your opinion on how you see the role of data in your products and services. And specific commercial question is, how do you leverage data or the value add from data to better and improve and enhance your products and services?
I think data takes a very, very important role in healthcare. And, especially now, the diagnostic depends on the data and depends on the accuracy of the data, and also depends on how to analyze those kind of data. So as we have several levels of the data, strategy. For example, we must, save the data. For example, we have several products. For the patient monitor line, we have a very small module, very small, I could say is a standalone patient monitor, but this one can also adapt it to the bigger bedside patient monitors. So we can store the patient data, start from, in the ambulance, and then transfer the data into the bedside, like in emergency room, like to the ICU and ward. So we make the data continuous and seamless transferred from the outside of the hospital and into the hospital. Let's make sure that the doctors and nurses can see the whole history of the patient. And also we have some technology to analyze those kind of vital signs, because there is more and more vital signs data from the patient. But today, too much information in the bedside can also make a confusion. Make the nurses or doctors sometimes lose the attention to the most important or most critical informations. So we have the software to analyze the level of the patient's vital signs and then combine all the alarm situation together to decrease the alarm numbers, to make sure the most critical alarm can be heard by the nurses and also doctors. So I think the data is not just a data, and how to use the massive data to help the doctors, to help the nurse is most important. And also we put some AI, artificial intelligence software, for example, into the ultrasound machines to help the doctors to be easily to diagnostic patients. And also put the data into the cloud, and also can make the most critical patient can be diagnosed by the other high-level hospitals. I think this can also help in maybe lower level, candidate level hospitals to make a more accurate diagnostic for the patients. So it's how to use the data, how to make the data can be useful or efficient by the from the devices to help the doctors. This is our target.
That's such an insightful answer, David. So, it's not only, as you say, the availability of the data, but how you keep it very customer-centric, customer-focused, and you bring the insights to the customer rather than just give them, a data dump, for example. Very interesting. And now it seems that data has really started to transform your industry, right? Not just the large industry, but also how you deliver your products and services. So a quick question which might be relevant also to the participants in this seminar. As you look at providing more solutions or services that integrate data, how do you, as a business, commercialize that and bring that to market? Do you partner with other people who have solutions? Do you buy them, for example, or do you develop it in-house? Because they're all, different considerations of how you bring that data aspect of your products and services to market. So your thoughts, please.
I think from the data side is because of the every government has started to have the law and regulations on the data protections, especially like Europe, like they have the GDPR, and also the like United States, they have a HIPAA. So I think that even in China, is the patient's data is very sensitive and is also be protected. How to use the data, it should be, we do not, as we have our rules, we do not take the data into our companies. We just help the hospital to use the data. So the hospital is the owner of the data. And there's we just use we can upload all the data into their server, and the hospital control all the patient data. And also very, very important, do not take the patient's information into any devices or any information in our central station or something. It's just to analyze the vital signs that is not related to some person. So I think that we must follow the regulation, we must follow rules, and we use the data, but we don't own the data.
Okay, so that's very interesting. So I guess given the data silos created by these regulations, then what you do is that you would have to vertically expand within your own capabilities and products and services. So you deliver kind of like an integrated solution to your customers because you can't share the data outside. It makes sense. Just from a regulatory perspective, because there might be people in the audience with some regulatory backgrounds who as you know, data regulations constantly evolve, right, with time. So what would be some of the, I guess, the potential changes that you would suggest to some of the data regulations that would enable greater and better outcomes for your, your consumers or the product, the customers of your product? Like if you were sitting across the table from a regulator in a coffee session, for example, what would you kind of say to him or her and give, what kind of suggestions would you give?
If you focus on the data regulations, I think the countries a lot of countries are still under development. It's not 100% finished, I think, and also it's how to use those kind of data. I think in the future, data is very, very important for the whole industry, and also for even the healthcare system. It's how to maybe for the private sectors or for the some manufacturers is not has this kind of a capability to manage those kind of data. But I think each government need to consider how to collect the data into some places and how to use this kind of resources to help for the future patients. Maybe each government need to build up the centralized the data center, and then is for the future the doctors or nurses or even the scientists can use those kind of data and to do some researches, based on that kind of researches to support the future patients' care. So I think this kind of resources, I'm not sure is 100% utilized. Yeah.
Okay, David. I actually checked my Slido and I see there are a lot of questions coming in. So the audience must be very excited by your presentation and the topics we're talking about. One last question though before we transition there, and that's on your key leadership learnings. Now, a lot of the people in the audience are either students or currently in the private sector, public sector. They're looking to confront some of these leadership lessons that you have, and you're deeply international, having been in different parts of the world and now back in Shenzhen. So could you just share a bit more about your leadership philosophy in a global R&D high-tech centered outfit like Mindray, and what are some of the key learnings that you have for the audience? Last question before we transit to the Q&A.
Okay, so I think it's as an international companies, it's manage the 10,000 employee. We are not very large, but I think 10,000 is also a quite big number. And also it's we have more than 1,000 international employees. How to make the whole team work with to the same directions is also a challenge. I think the first things from my point of view is we have the same visions. We need to know what we are doing. What is our vision? It's healthcare is the healthcare industry is kind of the industries. We contributed our work and to help the other peoples, and it's our mission is very clear. We want to develop the advanced medical technologies to make the healthcare more accessible. We see quite a lot of countries, quite a lot of hospitals they are still have not enough good devices. So this is our responsibility to do something for them. So we need to have the same vision, same mission. And also, I think it's transparency. So as an international companies, how can we make the people work together? How we need to share the enough information to make the all the people, all the employees understand what we are doing in headquarters or even in different, I think, countries. So. And the last one I think is very, very important is kind of the implementation. Is we have clear strategy and we have a clear vision, but we need to work together. We need to take actions. We cannot just wait, just talk. So so I think that is the three key things or key messages we can organize the team together. I think leadership is just to make the team understanding each other and to work together, focus the same target, then we can move faster.
Okay, great. Yes, so yeah, that makes sense, David. So alignment around vision, that's what I got. Communication down to the line, and then a bias towards execution. Yeah, makes total sense. Okay, so now I'm going to transit to the questions that everyone has posed on Slido. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start broad and then go into specific questions around specific topics of interest or specific industry related questions. So the first question from a broad perspective, what are some of the biggest headwinds facing the Chinese medical devices industry for it to grow, I guess, to similar proportions in the US and Europe? And perhaps here you could talk about both the challenges as well as the advantages or the tailwinds in the Chinese domestic medical device market.
I think the Chinese, if you talk about the Chinese domestic medical devices market, I think the market is booming very fast. And, especially after pandemic, the government started to invest. We have huge market, but also it's a huge geography preference. We have a lot of province, and there's by geography is huge. So we need to provide the good coverage, and also is we need to provide the good product because the market is huge. So it's a lot of competitors in the market. So we need to do the right things, and with the competitive product, and also it's a good support, good service. I think it's talk about the medical devices industry. I think each country they do have a different regulation, different policy, different styles. But I think the basic concept is the same. We need to have the good product, good service, good support, and also it's also competitive price because it's now even we have huge investment, but the social insurance is not enough because it's the people becomes older and older. So I think it's the funding is not always enough. We need to make sure so we can help the government save money. So I think that is something we need to do, and then we can invest more.
So related to this, David, so for an entrepreneur, let's say looking to enter the medical device industry in China, for example, what do you think are some of the opportunities or advice that you have for like someone looking to enter this vast, large market with firms such as yours, for example?
But if you talk about entrepreneur, I think is that my point of view, we should have a long-term strategy. Everybody want to move fast, but it doesn't mean if we just talk about the short-term strategy, want to just have a quick win, and then I think this will never be success. We must have a long-term strategy. We should be patient and should be solve the customer need. Then we can be success. I think we cannot just consider ourselves or our maybe own companies. If you only think about yourself, I think maybe you can win some deal, but you cannot be win in the future.
Okay, one more question, David, before we transit to the specific questions. One more question on expansion out of China. So this is a topic that's often discussed at UCLA Anderson, as well as even in globally, for example. Mindray now, obviously, you're very established in different parts of the world. Yourself and Jason, you've gone to different parts of the world to take up managerial positions. But what are some of the challenges that you and Mindray faced when you were, expanding out of China? What are some of the challenges, and how did you overcome them?
I think it's a different stage has different challenges. It's at the beginning stage, nobody know Mindray, nobody know Chinese company can produce the high tech product. So it's we need to make them understand us, and we need to show the right product to them. I think at the early stage, we need to make them know who is Mindray. And then we need to, after we establish that, we need to solve the problem about how to closely support customers. We need to establish our local offices, and then we should have our local employees. Then the challenge will be how to manage the local employees, how to build up maybe the employer brand in the industry, in that kind of the country's industry. So make sure all the employee understand each other, so we have the same target. And then after the country office is established, I think the business becomes bigger and bigger. So we will face the other challenges, like how to build up to take our social responsibilities, to make the whole company's brand in each country can be very well accepted. So, and also build up the long-term government relationship. And every country, especially international, they started to consider have a localized the manufacturer, and also they want to do something locally. So this is some challenge now. I think especially the big countries, they always think about to establish manufacturing in their own countries. But because of the medical devices is very special, because of the regulation is so strict, and also it's if the manufacturer is just one country, it will be not survive. So so currently we are still use the centralized manufacturer strategy, and we build up our manufacturing in Shenzhen. But maybe in the future we also need to establish our manufacturers outside of Shenzhen. So I think the different states have different challenges, but if you already had a long-term strategy, I think that challenge can be solved.
Very interesting, David, because this also has several parallels to when we and my course and Professor Kramer visited Shenzhen in 2019. Key things were, as you say, raise awareness. Second is provide them the customer support. Third, partner down the line. And what I mean by down the line is all the way from the doctors to the residents to even the hospitals, for example, at the institutional level. And then fourthly, of course, if you can expand manufacturing elsewhere and convince them that you're invested in their country and continue success, then that works as well. Yes. Okay. So moving on to a specific question around the integration with consumer electronics, for example. So today on our iPhone or iWatch, Apple Watch, all these consumer devices, there's a lot of data that could potentially be used for medical reasons. So now, what are your thoughts on the boundary between these consumer and, I guess, the segments you play in? And have you ever thought about expanding into such a sector, because that's fast, that's growing, and is a good source of data? Any thoughts on
that? Yeah, for sure. I think these questions is also related to how to define the healthcare range. It's if you only talk about the hospital treatment and also the home care treatment, and also on a daily basis, so everybody started to wear iWatch, some devices to monitor their data, vital signs data. From our point of view, we started to work closely and to start to monitor those kind of data and to started to evaluate the future collaborations. But now, as our main focus is still in hospital. Outside of the hospital, we do know there is a quite big potential and quite big opportunities and to develop. But for sure, that is the different business model and different sales channels. So we do see it's a big potential, and if we can use those kind of data in the futures, for sure it will help the patient a lot, also helps the doctors a lot. But for us, we are still focused on the hospital side now.
Okay. Just a really quick follow-up question from that, David, and I'm going to flip the question around. So I know they're very different segments, the hospital and as well as the the consumer segment. But do you see firms like Apple, for example, who are traditionally very strong in the consumer segment? Do you see them actually coming into your segments you play in anytime soon?
For sure, there is some application in the futures. They can, especially like we can use the iPhone's screen. We can transfer the images into the screen and make the doctors can see those kind of information immediately. So also alarms can be transferred to their mobile phones. They can monitor patients' data immediately. It's I should say. This can be interface. It can be a part of the device's solution. But I don't see a big opportunity for Apple to start to do a hospital, devices market. That is a different gene, and I think it's also a different knowledge, especially, I can share you a little bit more about the technology trend. The hospitals trend is technology trend is moved a little bit slow. It's not like the mobile phone. It's like Apple. They can launch the Apple 12 and iPhone 12, iPhone 13 maybe every year. But for medical device, it's impossible because it's patients or doctors are more care about safety. It's not fast. It's not fashion. They need to be safety first. Safety is the first priority. So then you can see in the hospitals quite a lot of devices is more than 10 years, but they're still used, and the technologies comes from 10 years ago. So as in this case, because of trainings, nurses, and it's not easy to shift from one application interface to another application interface. Maybe if they put the wrong button, maybe get some risk to the patients. So the exchange rate for the devices in the hospitals normally is 7 years. So, but in the past, I think one of the success reason. One of the reasons we can success is because we we use the latest technology, latest chips and software, and also the screen into the medical devices product. So makes us can be more faster and more intelligent compared with the old technology, like the other players. So I think we need to maintain the consistency and also put the patient safety as the first priority. And also because of the regulation makes also the technology, the latest technology introduced into the hospital market is a little bit longer compared with the consumers. So I think that is a different market segment and different concern or attention about the criteria. Okay.
Got it. So it's basically the traditional nature of the industry coupled with the regulations and the focus on patient safety that raise the barriers to entry. Okay. Yeah. We just got time for a couple more questions, but one follow-up question is: do you see traditional non-competitors such as Tencent, Alibaba, and so on? These are all big companies in China with different platforms that they collect data. And given that the theme of the conference is really technology-driven transformations of healthcare in this case, do you ever see them coming into your space? Maybe in the next 5-10 years.
I should say it's data, especially the transfer of the data, how to use those kind of data. if I think from Alibaba, from Tencent, I think the massive people, they can share those kind of data, and they can also analyze the consumers' data. That is really, really the different industry. I think it's for healthcare, where more care about patients, how to use those kind of data to help the doctors, to help the nurses, and maybe it's also not to make even the patient to understand those kind of data. The data in the hospital is used for a professional person. It's not used for just like a consumer. So I think that is the different scenario. So we need to have a more professional suggestions and the more accurate suggestions. It's not analyzed. It's not just show the data, that's all. So I think that we need to have a deep understanding about the data.
Okay, David, thank you. Time for one last question, specifically Mindray. So what are your key priorities in terms of technology for the next 3 to 5 years? Could you just say something about how Mindray is positioning itself with regard to technology and how it's transforming your industry?
Yeah, I think our technology is also focused on the data. It is how to share the data, how to analyze the data, how to use the data to help the doctors analyze patient situation. So I think that is our main focus. I think we do have several technologies like Connect. So as we connected all the patients' data and centralize all the patient data, like ventilators data, infusion pumps data, and also patient monitors data, even ultrasound data to one central station to make the doctors can just see one screen, can get all the information about this patient. So this is what we already launched and we already did in a lot of hospitals. And also we can also help the patient in the, for example, small candy hospitals, and their diagnostic data can transfer back to the central hospitals. And also at the same time, the central hospitals, high-level doctors in guidance can guide the small hospitals to do analyze, to show them how to make diagnostic for ultrasound. And this is a kind of functions is very useful during the pandemic, because in some of the hospitals, the ICU is blocked because it's in the right zone. So maybe the doctors do not know how to use ultrasound, but we can control, we can manage them outside of this red zone, and then they can use it. I think it's already show the high value of the doctors. I think that is our focus, how to make the technology can be more easier for the doctors.
Okay, before I pass it back to Professor Kramer for day 3 closing comments, I just wanted to thank you, David, Group Vice President of Mindray, and also Jason, the Director of Marketing at Mindray, and Kathy as well. Thank you for your comments are so insightful on the nature of not only Mindray's role in China, but also in the global market. A lot of learnings and takeaways from leadership to how to manage a global innovation outfit, to also how you think about competition, not only in your current sector, but also non-traditional competitors that could actually enter your sector. And indeed, healthcare is really being transformed by technology. And we look forward to Mindray's future successes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Professor, I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you very much.
Good. Hey, listen, I just want to add to Ryan's thank you here, David, to you, and obviously to Ryan for a very interesting conversation here. And I always like to share my own takeaways from that session. And I also like to share it on the Foxconn one. But, I think David's point about the growing need for healthcare services, expenditures, et cetera, especially in developing markets, when you look at aging population, the need for patient access, says that you've got a big market there, and a big market that's going to be growing, which I think stands out. I think, the points on COVID-19, it's an interesting comparison. We see it certainly here in the US, where people were saying, let's close hospitals, it's very expensive, and yet they were overwhelmed during COVID. and a different mindset now about the importance of hospitals and the infrastructure associated with them. Also David's point about data and how many references to data that he made, talking about the ability to take data and transfer it across a variety of settings, from an ambulance to an emergency room to a, hospital bedside, and the ability to highlight what is important about that data, I thought was a really interesting point. And what was interesting also, David, I think what you said about, a need to centralize data. I think about, I always kind of follow autonomous vehicles and how much they track test miles to be able to power an autonomous vehicle. And I think it's a very interesting point. Are we getting enough data in healthcare to do what we need to? Because there are a lot of privacy rules that block it. And in the case where you say more data is more predictive, improves diagnostic capability, it's a real message about, are we getting enough data out there? And then the final comment, just about all the questions that Ryan asked you about personal health care, new competitors, and where they complementary. But I think, David, your point about remember the context is unique in a hospital setting, that the focus on safety, the ability to make sure that doctors will adopt, all of that has got to be a key driver. So let me just add my own thank you. I learned more in 45 minutes about Mindray, about healthcare and everything. So a big thank you. And Ryan, you are a pro. You're going to take my job one day. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. And let me add a couple of comments on the Foxconn discussion we had, which I thought was just a fascinating one. And then we'll talk about tomorrow's activities. So just 2 or 3 things on Foxconn, I think, that are a takeaway. The first one is a company that has gone through ongoing transformation. When you look at the number of years, the number of sectors, et cetera, and when Dr. Chen went through all the different areas of transformation on the value chain and the focus on the value chain, on continuous improvement, about cultural adjustments, all of those things that were necessary to keep the company vibrant and growing as it has been. I think that was a really interesting one. The second one is, I think when Professor Wang asked Dr. Chen about what are your top priorities, knowing the size of Foxconn, they are a barometer, I would submit, about the world because of their scale. And when he called out electric vehicles, digital health, and robotics, very interesting to say that those are going to fundamentally be large markets that are going to grow, and to keep your eye on everything to do with those. And then the final thing I thought that Dr. Chen shared that was really interesting is about the future of work. And, when asked about what happens as robotics get, advanced at Foxconn and elsewhere, he said, listen, humans have to learn to work with machines. And then over time, they're going to have to look at more upskilling and reskilling. And it's an interesting tie to his advice to everybody at the end, kind of personal career advice, is make sure you're continuously focused on your ongoing learning about new skills, where things are going, because the static view about this is who I am and my core competency may not be good enough, and you need to advance your own skills. He also talked about the importance of a global network. In our own relationships, don't let tensions across the world stop the global network, because that will cause an impairment of our ability as leaders to lead in a broader environment. So I thought they just did a terrific job. Let me now just remind you, we're going to finish up now day 3. We have our final day tomorrow. That's Friday. It's going to be from 5 to 7:45 p.m. Pacific. That's Saturday, 8 a.m. to 10:45 a.m. China Standard Time. As you know, the focus will be on fintech disruptions and the most promising areas for tech sector investment. So we'll have 2 discussions. The first one will be on fintech. We'll talk about transformational lending, improved access and economic growth across society. We're going to have Renu Bhatia. She's a co-founder of Fintech Angels. We'll have Anthony Bezos, who's the head of Challenger Banking Economics at HSBC. and then Florian Spiegel, who's the CEO of Hunter Technology Group. And also he's the co-founder of Fabric, which is a Hong Kong-based blockchain and trading technology company. That will be the first session. The second session tomorrow will be focused on the investment landscape and the most promising tech sectors for investment. We've got 3 Anderson alumni. So Fritz Demopoulos, who's the founder of Queens Road Capital, which is a Hong Kong-based venture capital firm focused on early stage investments in emerging markets. We're going to have Gang Danny Chin, who's a partner at Wan Chan Capital Management in Shanghai, and Sam Sun, who's managing partner of Affinity Equity Partners, which is a leading Pan-Asia private equity firm based in Beijing. So let me just say in closing, thank you to our speakers and moderators today. For all of you in the US, have a great evening. And for all of you in Asia, have a great day ahead. Look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. Take care.